Scott Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a great pleasure to rise and take a call in the second reading of the Financial Assistance for Live Organ Donors Bill in the name of my friend and colleague Christopher Bishop. I want to join with others across the House this evening who have roundly and rightly congratulated Chris Bishop on this bill having been drawn from the ballot for the work that he has done personally to steer it through the House to this stage, particularly the diligent work that he did in preparation of the bill coming to Select Committee, and then for the nurturing and harbouring of the changes that were made at Select Committee to what clearly is has made what was already a very good bill into a much better bill, and one that the House can be particularly proud of, I think. Often people who are not part of this parliamentary process find the nature of a member's bill and the way a member's bill is drawn quite an unusual process, and many of our constituents often have their eyes slightly widened when they understand and are told that literally it is a lottery, and that there is a tin with numbered marbles and each bill is in there and the process goes through and somebody literally puts their hand into the tin and takes the marble out. And I think that it's one of the sort of vaguely quirky but wonderfully almost eccentric niceties of our parliamentary system that this process can occur. And often bills get drawn out that for one reason are highly politicised, that are very contentious, but every now and again something comes out of that tin, the draw is made, the lottery marble is plucked out, and something really, really good for the Parliament and for all New Zealanders pops out of the members' bill system. This, sir, is one of those occasions. And I've had the privilege of sitting on the Health Select Committee now for several years, and Julianne Genter, who is a recently new member to that committee, highlighted that in the recent few weeks that she's been on that committee, she's had an opportunity to see how this committee works collegially. And that's been my experience over the last several years, including back to the time when Dr. Paul Hutchison was chairing it in the last Parliament. A very, very good former chair. But the current chair is doing an equally good job. And this was a bill that, when it got to Select Committee, wasn't without some hurdles, and it actually involved some thought and policy development that was probably not originally conceived of by the author of the bill right back in its formative stages, which was actually Michael Woodhouse some time ago. But as we got it to Select Committee, we actually came reasonably quickly to the conclusion, aided and assisted by Mr. Bishop's careful guidance, that actually we could go further than the bill originally wanted us to go, and that actually compensating people who were generous of spirit and soul, literally, to donate their organs for the good of another human being, actually deserved something better than just 80% of recompense in terms of their time recuperating and recovering from their gift of an organ of their donation of an organ. And so it didn't, I think, take the committee much convincing that moving and extending that 80% to 100% was actually a very worthwhile step. But what it did do, sir, is it took the officials and then the policy rationale quite a bit of juggling around to get to that point, because the original premise for 80% was based on an ACC calculation, and the ACC calculation is based on a premise that the person is in some way ill or has had an accident, and actually by definition a person who is donating an organ isn't ill, they're not sick. And so why would you treat them in the same way, using the same financial basis, the same kind of financial formula, when actually removing one of the multiple barriers to organ donation was this issue of compensation. And so we got to a point in Select Committee where pretty quickly committee members agreed with that, and then we sort of worked our way through with officials and advice from the Ministry and a range of other very good advisors to come to the point that we have. Because heaven knows, sir, actually there are multiple barriers to donating organs, and as others have said this evening, we've got a very low rate of organ donation in New Zealand. We could do an awful lot better. When people donate an organ to another New Zealander, it's actually not only a very good thing for the person receiving the organ, but it actually has a fiscal positive benefit for taxpayers, all of us. And there is some real benefit, and it just seems to be completely perverse to somehow penalise those people who are generous enough to donate an organ and let them then suffer not only the physical effects of having to donate the organ and then recuperate and recover, but also they take a financial hit. That just doesn't make sense. So this is a bill that has quite deliberately come to a point of cost neutrality for donors. Equally, there was a little bit of discussion about whether we should go beyond 100%. And we decided against that in the end because just as at 80% that didn't seem fair, at more than 100%, there was the potential for perverse financial outcomes as well. And I think that we don't want to lose that generosity of spirit that goes with it. I don't think you'd want to have a situation where potentially, and I just say potentially, people would be using as a consideration in their decision to donate an organ that might be some kind of financial advantage for them. I don't think we'd want to go there. So we discounted that option pretty quickly and got to a point where the sweet point for this legislation was 100% compensation for their time in recovering from the operation that required them to donate an organ. And so, sir, this was, I think, a really good example. And often we say it in the House. We say, oh, gee, the Select Committee process is a good process because it means that legislation comes out of Select Committee better than it went in. But this is absolutely textbook example. And probably in years to come, I suspect that students who study parliamentary procedure, and maybe when they're looking at parliamentary process, they'll look at this glittering career that lies ahead of Chris Bishop, and they'll say, here was his first member's bill, and this is what he did. And this bill and the process of it and the outcomes that it has achieved, I think has the potential to probably enter into the annals of academic writing that will be carried on and looked back on with great affection over the years as a piece of textbook piece of legislation. And so Chris Bishop can rightly be pleased with this. It's the beginning of what I think will be a very good legislative career for him. I want to just make a comment before I sit down, Mr. Speaker, about a fellow by the name of Andy Tukey. Andy Tukey has been campaigning around this space of organ donations for years. I had an opportunity to spend some time with Andy way back in 2002, I think it was, when he first started on this personal crusade. He set a petition to Parliament, which actually ended up not achieving very much and was very frustrating for him. But then later in about 2005, 2006, I think it was, he did some collaborative work within the National Party list MP, Dr. Jackie Blue, and they worked on another bill that didn't again achieve the outcome that they were looking for. And so Andy has made this a campaign, a personal campaign, that he can be very proud of to have been part of over a long number of years. And I really just want to acknowledge his contribution to this process, to this bill. We still have a number of very significant hurdles to organ donation. It's my fervent hope, Mr. Speaker, that by passing this legislation, we will have removed one of the major financial barriers, one of the many hurdles. And it's my hope that in some small way, because this is not a silver bullet, this won't actually fix our organ donor rates, but it does help. It's a very good piece of legislation, and I think that not only Chris Bishop, Bishop, but the whole House can be pleased with the outcome that we appear to be heading towards. I commend it to the House.
The Honourable Ruth Dice.